and you are.
Hey yo, what's good everybody? It's your boy Manny, and have I missed you? I feel that it's been a while since we've been here. And I'm here at our studios, Major Media Headquarters in Worcester, Massachusetts, with the one, the only, my man, Mr. Bill Gardiner is in the house, former Worcester Police Department officer, currently involved with L.O.V.E is the Answer, and Worcester Interfaith. And it's such a great honor to have you here, my friend. You know, before we went live, I was actually talking to you, and I had to have you convince me. I've never interviewed you before.
Right.
This is crazy that I'm having you here now. So I feel like I've known you forever now. Way back in my Unity radio days, for sure. You know, when I go to Worcester City Hall, City Council, you know, or even in the community, George Floyd rally, where you shared your story with the community of, quite frankly, abuse with your experience in the Worcester Police Department, and you know, just giving us the inside glimpse, like almost a different perspective of the other side of what the Worcester Police Department, at the very least, and honestly, police culture, in my opinion, is really like from the inside out. So I've always been fascinated by your story, and I've always wanted to learn a little bit more, and that's why I invited you on. Finally, after all the time, what I was thinking. But you know what? Sometimes the universe happens the way it's supposed to, right? It presents this predestiny.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Today was the day.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
It's an honor to have you. So let's start by you just telling us, with your own words, a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background. And if you may, like, let me ask the first question, actually. Was being a police officer like one of those childhood dreams? Because I remember when I was in elementary school, they'd always ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? Sure. And like 90% of the kids would say police officer or firefighter.
Right. Yeah, well, it's funny because that's kind of a story that I tell about how I got introduced to law enforcement officially. I had a state trooper walk into my life when I was working retail way back in the day. And we just went out for a walk. It was a black state trooper, Al Tony, many people know, from the Holden and other barracks. And he asked me what I was doing with my life. And, you know, I said, we're pretty much looking at, you know, working retail and temping at the time. And he said, well, have you ever thought about a career in law enforcement? I told him, well, yeah, you know, police officer, firefighter, astronaut, like every other red-blooded American boy. And, but everybody I knew who was a police officer was the son, brother, nephew of a police officer. So I figured you had to have him in. And he's like, no, you take a civil service exam for the municipal police and state police exam and state police. Just watch the back of the classified section of the newspaper, which is what we were doing back then, before all this technology.
Yeah, before technology took over, you know, Google it in 5 seconds.
That's right, exactly. That's right. I took the state police exam, got a 95, took the civil service exam for police, got a 98, and just sat back and waited. And eventually got called up by the city of Worcester, and in the meantime had taken a job as a campus police officer at WPI. So to at least get my feet wet and get some, you know, a little bit of street cred, that kind of thing going on. I went to WPI. It was going to be the WPI of Clark, because at the time, those were the only two departments that had the special state police jacket.
Okay.
State police powers, Chapter 22, and were able to carry a firearm. So with that being just a little bit up, you know, a higher level than just being security, that will at least give you a little more of an introduction, you know, to law enforcement.
And it would be more like actually being a police officer.
Right, especially where we
responsibility.
Exactly. You know, you have a firearm, you have the power to arrest, and you have a lot of city streets running through those two campuses. So it is a very urban campus police department. So,
all right. Well, that's very interesting. I did not know that part of your story, but then it gets better, of course. So let's unpack a little bit of that. So, how did you make the transition from working for WPI to actually getting into the WPD? And was there, whether it was WPI or WPD, was there a time where you were like, oh yeah, this is it, like, this is fantastic? I mean, when I wake up to come to work,
Sure.
I can't wait to get to work. And it doesn't feel like work. It's over before I know it. I'm like, I can't wait for tomorrow to come. Was there ever a time as a police officer where you said, this is it, this is my career, I can do this till, I don't need to retire, I can do it till I die?
Sure. Yeah, no, when I first joined WPI, I really had a great time. You know, I was working on a college campus. And don't get me wrong, and we all know, policing on a college campus and policing for a municipality or a county or whatever is very different. But it's at least a step in the right direction, and you do start to, you know, develop those skills. The police academy that I attended for campus police was actually a 96-hour, they call it 96-hour reserve intermittent academy. I was actually elected the president of my academy class when I was at WPI.
Wow.
And
I mean, yeah, it's a good story, so I would imagine.
yeah, you know, it was good. I was out in Agawam every Saturday for like 3 months, and you know, became president of our class and made sure that every single cadet graduated. That was my platform, and to make sure that whatever
No cadet left behind.
no cadet left behind. Exactly, that was my platform, and you know, learned a lot, did a lot of, you know, firearms and personal safety, a little bit of law, you know, things along those lines. And I excelled in it and really enjoyed it. Got, you know, award for leadership, you know, being in that academy. And so everything was going really well. And then when I came to Worcester, the wheels just started to fall off the cart immediately.
Now, before we get to that, I just had another question that's like burning in my mind that I want to get off before we get to the Worcester part of it all.
Sure.
You're a black man, right? As a Latino myself, growing up, there has always been a stigma around police in the black and brown community. We're not friends,
Right.
So I would imagine you went into this knowing that you're going to face an uphill battle as a black man in policing, period, right? Even if it's state police, a college police officer, university police, or municipality police. What did you go in with any pre-notions like I'm gonna make a difference from the inside out type deal, or like what did you have anything like that going in, or did I mean I'm sure you knew you were gonna face some kind of adversity.
To be honest with you, no, I didn't. You know, the way that I was raised, the way I was brought up, the leadership skills. You know, I was a lifelong scout. You know, became an Eagle Scout, and was always usually the senior most ranking scout in my troop.
Wow.
And so I had the ability to be able to, you know, have to be a leader from after the first year I joined the Boy Scouts.
Yeah. Which isn't easy, by the way. I was in the Boy Scouts. I made it to the first class, and I was done. I was cooked after that. I was like, I don't know. I can't do Eagle Scout. I'm never get there. I bet if I
you would
myself better, you would have got me there, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely, it was a place where I got to, you know, spread my wings and learn about leadership and learn about teamwork and learn about cooperation, learn about, you know, supporting those that are around you that might not have the knowledge you have. And so I was always in that position, whatever I did as a young person growing up. And so when I became a police officer, it was just a matter of, you know what, I'm going to be able to serve my community in that very same capacity. And, you know, I had an awareness with those things going on, but it was nothing that was forefront in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to get on the job and be Billy Gardiner and be the person that I always am and bring that to the job. And didn't think that there were going to be any issues, certainly not with the public, but definitely didn't think it was going to be within the department.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a great place to transition to the department, where the story that I know, the story that you've repeated many, many times, began. So let's just jump right into it. You go from WPI to now WPD.
Yes.
All right, and tell me a little bit about that transition. Why did you leave from the university? Was it a better opportunity? And what were your thoughts going into the WPD?
Well, the opportunity was always to become a municipal police officer. I wanted to work for the city, work for my city, you know, and be able to help, you know, people. And I've always been kind of a, and it's funny because I'll use the term social worker now, but back then I never really thought about it. But I've always been that like social person that always just looked out for other people. I went to Worcester Academy, and Worcester Academy back then was 7th through 12th grade, with like no delineation, no middle school, no high school. It was just you started at 7, if you stayed, you went out at 12. And so we had a lot of our true freshmen, 7th graders, that of course, you know, if you remember back to those days in school, when you were that young, and with older kids, you were a long, long time ago. You know, your book bag was being thrown in the trash, and you were being stuffed in a trash can, and had your stuff thrown on the roof and stuff like that. And those are things that I refused to do. And not that, you know, Worcester Academy was out of control and stuff like that, but, you know, younger kids got their fair share of hazing from older kids. And I wouldn't do that. You know, I did the complete opposite. I would actually be hanging out as a senior with 7th graders in what we called the Megron, a place where you go study in the middle of the day. And I'd be studying and let them study with me and actually interact with them. Right. And there's still folks from that time period that always, you know, reach out to me every once in a while. You know, thank you very much for being who you were back then, because you really accepted us and we really appreciated that. So I was bringing them my thoughts to the Worcester Police Department. And from the time we were in the academy, I was subjugated to just bullying behavior the minute that the academy started. You know, we started to have classes with outside instructors come in, and somebody would say, you know, how many people in the room have previous law enforcement experience? I spent 2 years as a campus police officer. I raised my hand. And you'd hear the eyes clicking and the teeth sucking from the back of the room. Oh, he wasn't a real police officer. You know, and this was said out loud. Yeah. You know, so that I could hear it. And, you know, that it just continued and got worse. You know, we'd be taking exams and somebody would think, well, I can do this based on this, that, and that. Oh, actually, no, you can't. You know, if you have an arrest warrant for Manny, but you're in John's house, unless I see you on the street and say, man, you have a warrant for your arrest, and you run into John's house, fresh and continued pursuit, or knowing you're in John's house, you go to the door and knock and announce, and we hear, I'm going to kill you. Exigent circumstances, we kick the door, we can go in, we happen to find you, we can arrest you. Short of that, we have to surround the house, make sure you don't climb out the window and get away. Call a judge, say, listen, we have an arrest warrant for Manny. It's in John's house. This is why we know he's in there. Can we have an entry warrant for John's house? Wow. That's how that has to work. You don't know what you're talking about. We're the effing police. We can do anything we want to do. And sure enough, if not the only one of the only people to get the question right.
Wow. And I mean, listen, to an extent, they're not wrong, because again, bringing the police culture, a lot of people don't know these things, and they just accept that abuse because they think the police know what they're talking about. And I don't want to make it worse, so come on in, do your thing. But in reality, there are steps, there are appropriate steps that Worcester police officers across the nation have to follow, because the job is to protect and serve, right? First and foremost, it's not to power trip, which is what we see a lot. And you could see that culture brewing when you were in the academy.
Yeah, it was nuts, and it happened a lot.
And there was no one correcting that behavior. Like, what did your professor say? Did they call that out?
Just like anywhere else, you're in here. You know, it's in the locker room. It's on the.
Oh, right.
It's usually never around, with the exception of a few times that things were said like behind my back in the classroom. Yeah. And evidently either nobody heard it, or nobody was paying attention to it. Right. You know, who knows? But those kinds of things happened all the time. There was one, and I'll Reader's Digest this story. There was a fact pattern where we were trying to see if we had a felony arrest of someone that was potentially breaking into a motor vehicle in the nighttime, stealing property over, and I forget what it was, $250, something like that, which would have made it an arrestable felony. And something in the fact pattern was just wrong. I read it, and I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm looking at a van, VCR spilled out on the ground, and then I'm driving down the street, and I see 2 guys walking one with the VCR. I stopped them to figure out that the VCR did come from the truck, but do I have an arrestable felony breaking into a motor vehicle in the nighttime, felony over? And I'm like, no, I don't. And again, I said, there's something wrong with the fact pattern. So I wrote into the March, basically, based on the information provided, I do not have where I think this question was going, but at a minimum, I have receiving stolen property on one, and with the other person, nothing. They have to get hit. And I can summons this guy for receiving stolen property. And the teachers, the instructors, when they brought the exam back out, we're going over the exam, made a specific point when they got to that question to say that something happened with the question where when they were printing it, because we used to use an old cane machine, so instead of being able to hit print, you had these 2 pages on a machine, they were overlapping each other, so part of the fact pattern was missing. And they said, we were going to throw the question out, but one cadet in particular noticed that there was something wrong with it, rationalized what the real answer was, and explained it in the test. So we're going, and got it correct. So we're going to keep it in. And that cadet is Billy Gardiner. And from the back of the room came effing know-it-all. Of course, they didn't use the term effing.
Right.
And it just went downhill from there.
Yeah. Wow. So none of that, like, I mean, some people, you know, right in that moment or in those moments of school itself or academy itself, excuse me, would have probably been like, you know what, like, I'm done. I can't keep putting myself to this. I can't keep subjecting myself to this. What made you persist?
Whatever that is inside of me that keeps me going to this day. It's just, you know what, this is the job that I want. Maybe things will change when I get on the street. Maybe things will change if I get ranked one day. Maybe things will change if I get into the right unit. Which a few times over my career did happen. You know, getting into I got asked to be part of starting our first domestic violence unit, and we had probably was the best supervisor in the department in charge of it, and I could do no wrong when I was in that unit working under him. And the minute he left that unit, he was replaced by a sergeant who completely hated my guts, and within 2 months, I was kicked out of the unit.
Wow. And this is the Worcester Police Department by this time. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. I mean, I'm sure that had to have been, you know, depleting, and it felt made you feel defeated. And again, by this time, you're still still going strong. Walk me through some more experiences in the actual Worcester Police Department now itself. You know, even the good times. I'm sure, you know, that's for all the bad stuff we talk about. I'm sure there were good days where, I mean, you stayed long enough to experience so much.
Sure.
What was your actual experience? First of all, when were you an actual police officer? What year?
April 4, 94 to April 4, 2000.
Okay. So you had a nice 6-year run there.
10 years.
10. You said 94 to 2000. Oh, 2004. All right. I should have let you finish your sentence. That's my problem. People off earlier. I apologize about that. So you had a nice 10-year run there. You know, walk me through some of your days. What were some of your highs? What were some of the lows?
Sure. I mean, I had great relationships with people all around the city. There was a point where when we first graduated, we actually had the largest class in the police department's history. We started out with like 62, 63 cadets, ended up graduating somewhere around 52, 53, something along those lines. So when our class got out, normally what would happen, especially in the smaller department, is everybody would go midnights and then have to work their way trying to go back to first shift. We call it first half. Second shift, I should say. Or, you know, you just put in your years at midnights. And our class, half of us were able to go second shift and the other half third. Because of my grades, I was able to go second. So we worked 3 to 11, 4 to midnight. And one of the first things that they did with a group of us was have us do a foot patrol in the Pleasant Street, Russell Street area, which is a poorer neighborhood in the city. And at the time had a reputation. Because, you know, it wasn't the entire neighborhood, but there were people in the neighborhoods who were causing some problems and dealing in drugs and things like that. And so we would walk a footbeat our entire shift in those neighborhoods. And myself and another black officer, you know, we would do that, you know, our 4 days on for the most part, and built really amazing relationships with people in that community. And later on, when I was actually in a cruiser doing patrolling in that neighborhood, I turned the corner to come down the street, and you know, you could see like little heads pop out, and kids looked, all of a sudden recognized it's Officer Bill, and like 12 kids come running out to the from like everywhere, and start surrounding the car. And, oh, kids, you guys in the street, get over, you know, go over on the sidewalk. I want to get you out of danger, you know, that kind of thing. And they're all hanging on the side of the car, and I'm looking inside the car, and I had just gone to Dunkin' Donuts. It was the beginning of the shift. went and got a coffee, and went and got a muffin. And my thing was, I wasn't going to eat donuts. One, because I didn't want to stick to that stereotype.
Right.
But two, donuts are bad for you. And not that muffins are any better, but they're not donuts.
Right.
They're not donuts.
They give you the illusion that they're a little bit healthier.
That's right. That's right. So one of the kids was, "Oh, Steve, I knew Coxie Donuts, Coxie Donuts." I'm like, "No, no." Oh, I opened up the bag and showed them. It's a muffin. I said, "My blueberry
Healthy
muffin
choice
right here."
guys.
And I said, "Listen, if any of you ever catch Officer Bill eating a donut, I'm going to give you $5."
Yeah.
And I was a mark, man. Like every single time I came, they were on. Never paid out.
And you never ate a donut. And look at you. We still running
I'm
pretty
you know, I'm
I mean, look good. You don't look like you've been eating 20 years worth of donuts, so we're good.
It's 14.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, we got a lot more of the story. I'm really looking forward to share. But first, a quick thank you to our sponsors. We'll be right back. Hey, yo, what's good, everybody, and welcome back to Mandatory Media Interviews. I am here with Bill Gardiner, former Worcester Police Department officer and affiliated with
L.O.V.E.
Listen,
Yeah, listen, I'm surprised I remember.
that's a lot to remember. I'm surprised I remember your name. Usually I get the organization right and I get the names wrong. I'm all over the place. But listen, it's not a Mandatory Media production if I don't fumble something. So here we are. Welcome back. And before we left, we were talking about your highs and lows as a Worcester police officer.
Sure.
And one of the first stories you shared with us was the high of being in the community and forming relationships, particularly with the youth of that community and the youth finding safety with having you in their community, despite, it's especially in the Black and brown communities, there's such a stigma put on police officers. It almost sounds to me as if you were starting to break down those barriers and erase some of those stigmas for the youth of our community.
Oh yeah, most definitely. One time in particular, I'm probably 3 years in the job now, just after I left the domestic violence unit and became a bicycle patrol officer. And sometime before I had come on the job, there had been an incident. The Worcester Youth Center had just been started. I don't know all the details of the story, but evidently it started with a bunch of Worcester folks who had kids down in the basement of City Hall. And they eventually got a space in the 500 block of Main Street. That's where the first official Worcester Youth Center was. And there had been an incident where there were kids hanging out in front of the center. Someone called the police on them. Don't know what it was they were doing. Most of the time, they're just hanging out. But people don't want little black and brown kids out on the sidewalks in front of their businesses. Whatever happened, the police were called. And it happened to be a board meeting going on inside, so all the board members were there, all the staff were there. And they see all of a sudden the kids out front with several Worcester police officers. So Adolfo Rasti, who was the executive director at the time, I believe Sean Harris and Manny Guerra were the three, went outside to see what was going on, see if they could, kind of get between the kids and the cops, make sure nothing happened. Whatever happened, long story short, the three of them got pepper sprayed and arrested. And when I got on the job, all you ever heard was these little undertones of those effing kids in that effing youth center. And so one day on my way back,
And these are from your colleagues.
these are from my colleagues in the Worcester Police Department. And so I'm coming back in from working in Maine South. And I said, you know what? Let me roll in there and see what's going on. And I came in, parked my bike, and said, you know, hey, golf ball, my name's Billy Gardiner. I work in this area sometimes, and just want you to know who I am. If you ever need anything, you know, I'm here to help. Because I've heard nothing but bad things about the youth center from other offices. And I know it can't be true. So he gave me a quick tour of the facility. And basically, it was like, came in one door, went out the other door. He said, well, why don't you come back another time? And I just laughed to myself. I was like, oh, he's going to go check out and see who I am and what I'm all about. And I said, all right, no problem. I came in the very next day. And I said, hey, go home. That didn't waste any time. No. And that just began. Every day, whether I was on duty or off, I would stop in the youth center. This was in August. By October, I was invited to be on their board of directors. I was on their board of directors from 1997 to 2000.
As a police officer.
As a police officer. And that didn't.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people knew there was a police officer on the board of the Worcester Youth Center.
Yeah, well, a lot more people back then.
Yeah.
And then, you know, some people that you'll talk to today, I mean, people like, you know, Manny Guerra, Brenda Jenkins, you know, other folks like Sean Harris.
All pillars of the community, by the way.
Right.
I love these guys.
Yeah.
Dropping some real names, right?
Mm-hmm. So, but when I, you know, got back to the building, all of a sudden I had the nickname of Gang Leader. Because I was on the board of directors and involved with those kids down there. So, a negative to the positive.
So the Worcester Youth Center, now correct me if I'm wrong, at the time it was very similar to how it is now, meaning it served youth, right? Children, right?
Primarily black and brown youth from poorer communities, some gang affiliated, some not. But the idea, but still children. The idea behind the youth center was that the youth center itself was a safe space.
Right.
There was no,
regardless of who you are,
it was a neutral space.
regardless of affiliation or non-affiliation, everyone goes there. They treat each other with dignity, respect, and they have a good time outside of where they normally come from, where they don't have access, they don't have privilege to get to certain activities or you know, being able to do something simple as play pool, right?
Exactly.
For children, even maybe young adults, 18, 19-year-olds, right?
Exactly.
And you're talking about your colleagues who are grown men and women, I'm sure. I don't know.
Not a lot of percent, but yeah.
But mostly grown men. For me, growing up, anyway, I always thought like it was the position of a grown man to guide, lead, and provide wisdom to the youth coming up behind him.
Exactly.
Regardless of what your title, job, career is, right? Or my business.
Sure.
Right. But not to label, not to dismiss, not to demonize the children. So we have police officers. I'm just making sure. I'm sorry, not that you just blew my mind. We have people who took an oath to protect and serve the community, saying things or minimizing what's going on in the community to those effing kids and likening you to a gang leader rather than stepping up and guiding these people, young people, children, who are misguided back onto the right path. Is that about where we're at? Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure I wrote that down and I understood it correctly because it sounds complete and utter bonkers.
It is. Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Another very similar situation. Again, I'll Reader's Digest this one. There was a point where there were young people, especially with my experience with the youth center, who we knew were starting to get in trouble. Young males, black and brown males, were starting to get in trouble, but not serious trouble. You know, the first stupid offense, maybe shoplifting or something dumb like that. And they're appearing before this juvenile court. And at the time, Judge Louis Perez was the juvenile court judge, one of the best judges I've ever met in my life.
Still a man of the community. Always comes out. Shout out to Judge Perez.
Yeah, no doubt. And I went to him and I said, listen, Judge, I've got another officer who wants to create, get some gym equipment for our new gym. And I'm thinking about creating a diversion program. if you ever have young black and brown males come before you who aren't really getting in serious trouble yet, can you divert them to us? And we'll take them and put them into a 12-week program where we teach them about, healthy habits and, good drugs versus bad drugs, good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, all those things.
Yeah.
And then that's for the first hour. For the second hour, be able to have them come into our police department gym and then work out, find a baseline for all kinds of different exercises, and then work to improve that over 12 weeks.
Right.
Well, one day I went into the building and I went into the service division, and there was a lieutenant happened to be standing there. And without saying a word, looked at me and immediately started ripping me a new one and said, if I had known you were going to have those effing kids in our building, I never would have paid my gym dues. You do too much social work. That's what your problem is. Too much social and not enough police work.
But police work is social. Anyway, go ahead.
It is. No. That's always where that story goes. As far as I'm concerned, and I started to learn it then, was that being a police officer is nothing more than being a social worker with a gun and a badge and the power to arrest. That's it. After that, it's the same as any other social worker out there.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're dealing with people every day of all different backgrounds, situations that you're running into, and you have to deal with each one accordingly. I would imagine social skills would play a huge role in that, which makes it social work.
Right? Yeah.
I don't know. It's exhausting, the fact that we are where we are, and I just want to make it clear when we were speaking, and I thought about this earlier. I personally don't have a problem with the Worcester Police Department. I do absolutely have a problem with police culture, but there are many officers like yourself at the time who are amazing. They are amazing officers, and I'm not calling for like the abolition of police and all that stuff. And I don't feel like you are completely either, right?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, when all that rhetoric started about defunding the police, I'm like, okay, I see where you're coming from, but that's not quite where
it's not
we need to be at it. And it's not real.
It's not real. So let's be real. Somebody steals my car, I need help getting my car back. I'm just saying.
Right. No, exactly. There are definitely times where you need police and there's specific set of skills. But at the end of the day, let's just go back to that, protect and serve, line that we all know. Unfortunately, the culture, and I guess I should go back and say, and I usually try to say this at the beginning, no, not every police officer is bad. In fact, good majority of police officers aren't bad officers, and some are really great officers. But unfortunately, you already named it, the culture is disgusting. And that's a nationwide problem. It's even a worldwide problem. But
it's bad, it's sensational. It sticks out.
People
want to know more about that. And you don't hear of all the good things that happen with officers every day. I'm a person to give a shout out to one of my favorite officers in the city. And that's, God help me. God help me. I want to get Michael Early. Officer? Sergeant? Matthew? I don't know.
It's Captain Matthew.
I know it's Captain, thank you.
He was the officer at the time who was working with me to create the diversion program.
He's such a great guy. I didn't know that. He's such a cool guy. Every time I go into City Hall, I feel like this guy really cares about the community. He really cares about the people, the city council, of course, the people that hired him to be there. But he also cares about the other side of the bench, all of us that are there, making sure that everyone is comfortable, making sure that everybody is treating each other with respect, making sure that everybody has an opportunity to get to the podium. Just a really good dude.
Yeah, he is.
Nobody talks about him. No. I'm so sorry I called you Michael Matt. But put some respect on the man's name, Captain Matt Ridley. He's a good dude. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But he gets overshadowed by the other officers who there are many, many of, not just a few bad apples, right?
Yeah, no.
There's many bad apples this may not have been discovered yet, who are abusive, not only to the community outside City Hall or other venues there, but they just don't. I don't know. There's a aura about them and the way they carry themselves is that, this is how it should be, and we're not doing anything wrong. What do you mean? It's Bill who's the crazy one.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you feel that?
Well, that's what it felt like being in the department. I mean, I was the one who was the outlier, but I knew better than that. Although my psyche didn't understand the difference, and I suffer from severe depression, hyperanxiety, post-traumatic stress to this day. That just doesn't go.
And was that all brought on by your time as a police officer, or was that a lifelong battle?
This was something that developed in the police department and was caused by the police department and was adjudicated by a state medical panel that said that it was the police department and my work as a police officer that brought that about. Or my treatment being a police officer, I should say.
Yeah. So, before we run out of time, I want to make sure that you do get the most important parts of your story that you want to get out there. We've talked a lot about your early experience. What led you to finally throw your hands up and be like, you know what, now it's taking a toll on my mind, right? My soul. I'm depressed. I'm now having to seek therapy and get medication by this point. What was the final straw that was like, you know what, I have to remove myself from the situation to protect myself?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to make the decision. The decision was made for me. I ended up having an argument with a dispatcher. One day, he came into my office yelling and screaming at me. Said I hung the phone in her ear, and she has a bad ear. So she and I got into a verbal argument. I left for lunch, came back. She filed a report against me, and so I had to file a report back. And in my report, and this is like 8.5 years in, I'm like, I have been asking for help. I do not feel, I can't remember how, but my mental health is not that great. I have a very short fuse. I remember writing that, and I've been asking help for years and not getting it, and being ignored by this department. And there, the chief at the time, his response was, "Well, he's a danger to himself and others." Put me immediately on administrative leave, took my weapon, took my license to carry, and put me out to pasture. And then spent the next 1.5 years trying to get me fired. While I went through a battery of psychological evaluations and internal medicine evaluations and other things to prove that it was in fact a job that did to me what was going on with me physically and mentally. And that ended up turning into me being pushed out of the department. They refused to honor my 72% disability retirements, and I was on 25%, which right now is only about $14,400 a year, which is below the poverty level. Yeah. And I'm underemployed because of my
not to put all my business out there, but I make way more than that. I struggle to live, so. But why are you looking at me like that? Are you surprised that I make that much? I don't make way more. You've been right. I'm still in poverty level myself, but I make more than $14,000 a year, and it's still a struggle for me to be able to handle all my business. So I absolutely feel for you, and I understand that's extremely detrimental, and I hope that there's something that would be able to turn that around for you. With that being said, is there some kind of resolution or solution that can come about that will make you feel? I mean, you can't buy back the time that you lost, but make you feel vindicated in some sense. Make you feel like, okay, the Worcester Police Department has taken accountability. Maybe even has changed some of their ways to make me feel like what I went through was worth it. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, if the city would, own it. I was treated, and it's all very well documented. The treatment that I received and how it affected me. And there are officers who I still have connections, whether it be personal connections or hearing other people who have relationships with different groups of police officers across the city. And things haven't really changed. In fact, some people, they say it's worse. There are lots of police.
Do you mean internally or overall?
Internally. Yeah, within the department. They're not being treated.
Because I've seen, I'm going to be honest with you, but I've seen, I don't know if I could say complete change, but a shift, a step in the right direction since Paul Saucier, the new chief of the Worcester Police Department, has taken over. I've definitely seen a major uptick in more black and brown individuals graduating the police academy and becoming Worcester police officers. I personally have had interactions with quite a few of the newer police officers who seem to want to carry forward the culture we're talking about, more protect and serve, love thy neighbor type of attitude, being out there in the streets, interacting with people. I do see all that. I don't want to say that there is no change or shift at all from my perspective, but I wonder, as someone, from the inside that you really know, like, is this all just like, what do they call it? Like a dog and pony show?
Yeah, dog and pony show. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, yeah. Like I said, I have connections, and I hear stories and people who have intimate relationships with some of those officers, especially officers of color. And I don't know what your interactions have been with, and maybe it's because you're media, maybe it's just because they're putting on a front. But I know people who have actually worked with some of these officers who have been told by these officers that they don't feel that they're allowed to do the kind of things that we're talking about on the job, or else they'll suffer the repercussions for it, and that they really don't enjoy being on the job.
Yeah. I actually do know a Worcester police officer. I don't. So it's a female officer. She's African American, Black American, who has had to find employment elsewhere. I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to give any of her identifying things away. Who actually said exactly what you just said. They went in there thinking that they can make a difference and wanting to be more of a protect and serve and love that neighbor type, and really bring change to the community, and was met with a lot of pushback and a lot of, for lack of a better term, really abuse, emotional abuse, if you will, not physical. Just want to make that clear. And this is someone who is young.
Sure. And that emotional abuse can be worse than physical abuse, to be honest with you.
I don't, the old saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. What the biggest lie I've ever heard. It's the lie. But it's crazy to think that, will there never be change? Will it always be us against them? And they're never going anywhere. Meaning, the Worcester Police Department, any police force across the country is never going anywhere. The community, obviously, we're here, right? Nobody's going anywhere. We're all stuck with each other, but yet there's a lot of this, right? Do you think in your mind, in your heart of hearts, that there can ever be this? Because I always think, I want to build a bridge between the Worcester Police Department and the community so we can all live in peace and harmony. Because, I've always had this fantasy since I was a wee little lad.
Right.
Am I living in fantasy land, or can that be reality someday?
It's possible. Some of the work that we do with Love is the Answer actually addresses that. The whole Love is the Answer movement came out of an incident of our executive director being stopped one too many times for walking while black in his predominantly white neighborhood in Maryland. And so from that, we've created programming that actually brings, at a start, the police and black and brown communities together to watch a film that kind of addresses the issue, sees a positive outcome from those issues, and then shows how we can start to do activities with each other, whether it be going to have coffee together, playing Monopoly together, painting a mural together, doing a community garden together, which these things take time or happen over time. So where, me as a police officer and you as a civilian, we can actually sit down and talk. And if we talk, we're going to eventually see, hopefully, if we're open-minded enough, that each other is human.
Right.
And maybe the next time I, as an officer, roll into the neighborhood, I won't be so quick to yell and scream and, put everybody down. And conversely, the public won't be so quick to say, F the police.
Right. Well, we'll see.
Something that sometimes
we would see
does happen.
Bill Gardner before we'd see a police officer, right?
Right, exactly. That's the goal. Right. And I see before I see just an individual, person of color.
Against someone.
Right.
I'm not against it, I'm just saying, if I'm on the street corner, I'm like,
Exactly. But to answer your question, I think it can be achieved, but the culture that you mentioned has to change. There's an overall culture that the community is to be seen and not heard, to use that old expression we used to use with children. Children are supposed to be seen and not heard. And there isn't, in general, in the culture of policing, that community policing aspect where we're all part of the community. It's more of, we're here as police officers to keep the public in line. And heaven forbid you step out of line and pop off, because then there's going to be hell to pay.
Yeah.
And until that changes, and you can see that across, if you ask enough people, you'll find out that this even happens with white folks. And this is an important point. When we came on in the job again, so many of us, and when you first get on a job, you need to learn the whole city. So we would be everywhere from Salisbury Street, a very well-to-do part of town, to Kilby and Gardiner and Canterbury Streets, which aren't very well-to-do parts of town, and then everything else in between. And so you'd see the same officers go to calls in both places. They would react very differently to people in Salisbury Street than they would to people in Kilby, Canterbury, Cambridge Street. And those people caught hell because they were mostly people of color, people who didn't speak English as their native language, people who were poor, homeless, things along those lines. And those people caught hell.
Real quick, because we are running out of time. Are we wrapping? We're wrapping. Do you think the culture is brought on by racism,
Yes.
economic status,
Yes.
or both?
All of the above. And ever since the first, well, we can go back and beyond the behavior that was, dished out to the indigenous people of this country. And then never mind all the Africans who were brought over here and turned into slaves. And the racism that came out of that to keep that group of people down was only perpetuated by the formation of slave patrols back then. Which anybody wants to do a little historical dive on that, do a deep dive on slave catchers. And that was the modern policing of the time that were hired to protect plantations, property owned by rich white business owners and plantation owners at the time. And to keep us in line, we're evil, we have extra strength, we'll rape your daughters, all the negative and nasty things that could possibly happen, we're told in general, but especially to people in law enforcement, and that has just carried through the last 406 years ever since we were first brought to this country.
Well, Bill, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story, sharing your thoughts and ideas on how we can move forward. And I'm sure we'll have some more conversations to be had in the future. There was actually some other questions that I wanted to get to, but unfortunately, we're all out of time. We got to go, but I will be inviting you back, and I hope you'll come back.
Awesome.
Did you have fun today?
Yeah, most definitely.
Give him the circumstances. As much fun as we could possibly have. But with that being said, I just want to give you an opportunity to let the community know how they can get involved, how they can inspire change, maybe by working with L.O.V.E is the Answer or Worcester Interfaith. Let them know where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. You can reach out to Worcester Interfaith. One of the things that I'll be actually talking about today at the No Kings rally behind City Hall will be how people can get involved with Worcester Interfaith, which basically does organizing around issues that are plaguing our local community, our local society. So if anybody wants to reach out to Roberto Diaz, who is our executive director of Worcester Interfaith, they could reach out to me if they ever, get in touch with me or are in contact with me somewhere. We can help them to see what it is we do, how we do it, go through some of our training courses on how to really organize around making change in their community.
Excellent. And shout out to social medias.
Social media, we got L.O.V.E is the Answer. You can check out #TryLoveNow.com for L.O.V.E is the Answer. And Worcester Interfaith has a presence on Facebook as well.
All right. And also, I believe there might be some tagged stuff up there in the description, so go click around.
There you go.
And find yourself on over to L.O.V.E is the Answer and Worcester Interfaith. Bill, Gardiner, my man, thank you so much. I'm glad that we finally did this. And before I go, there's just one last thing I'd like to say, and that is I wish all you amazing dads out there. Are you there?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, so.
I live vicariously through other people's.
Yeah, there we go. Have a happy Father's Day. And to all the kids out there, especially mine, I thank you for giving me one of the best jobs in the world. My three boys, Jaden, Akeem, and Ethan, the J in Manny J Media. Until next time, it's your boy Manny, and this has been Interviews, Manny J Media, community delivered. We'll see you real soon. Peace.
Peace.